You've probably heard stories about outlaws of the Old West, like Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch, robbing banks, holding up trains, and thumbing their noses at the law. People cheered him on, too, but they were the last of their kind because the railroads started hiring gunmen to ride along and stop them. And so by 1900, with some of the gang dead, Butch was talking amnesty with the governor and ready to call it quits. But he pulled a couple more jobs instead, enough to pay lawyers for his men and a getaway to Argentina with his girl and the Sundance Kid. And that wasn't the last they'd hear from Butch Cassidy, though, because he was destined for a showdown with the law. His mom and dad, Scots and Irish by birth, were recruited to Utah by Mormon missionaries, promised land and passage if they'd convert. Butch, though, he never took to Mormon ways, and by age 13 was riding with the rustler Mike Cassidy, whose name he used, stealing horses and cattle till Butch landed in a Wyoming prison for 18 months. Soon as he was out, Butch and 3 gunmen robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride of $21,000 in gold. They had fresh horses waiting along the way, so they could outrun the law like they always did, and then lay low in one of their hideouts along the outlaw trail where the law'd never find them. But at the rendezvous, Butch showed up without his share of the gold, and this is what happened. After they split up, Butch headed up Cannonball Mesa to a stone tower and some kivas on the rim of a canyon where the ancients used to live. Must have made him think all by himself up there, looking over all that emptiness. And at dusk, he carried the gold down into a kiva. The roof was gone, and when the full moon rose, it lit up half the floor in a small hole where the first people come up from the underworld. And then he heard the drum, like his heart echoing around and around the circular room until the shadow of the tower fell across the floor like an axe, and it stopped. Next morning, Butch stashed his bags of gold in a cave down the canyon, then headed toward the Green River and the hideout at Robber's Roost. And that gold is what this story's all about. More than 30 years later, a shepherd found one of Butch's sacks, took a few coins into town, tried to cash them, and he was jailed because it was illegal to sell gold during the Depression. Nobody ever came across the rest of Butch's gold, though plenty went looking. So it must still be out there. And that's what they told me anyway. Go up there when the Scorpio moon rises, they said, on the night of purifying light, and maybe you'll find it under the Bandit moon. And so I got to the ruins, climbed down into the kiva and waited for the moon and drum, figuring I'd have a vision or something that'd lead me to the gold next morning. But just before dawn, a raven woke me. I didn't remember moon or drum or even falling asleep, and I never found cave or gold, just the cry of that raven above me in the canyon all day. Must have meant something, or maybe he was just mocking me. I probably should have known anyway. Butch had come back for the gold himself, at least that's what I think now. See, he'd been raising cattle in Argentina a few years when he got word the Pinkertons were coming, so he and Sundance went on the run and back to robbing banks. And they were supposed to have died in a shootout with soldiers in Bolivia, or so everybody said. Years later, see, Butch's sister claimed he hadn't died in Bolivia at all, said he came back to live near her in Spokane. Probably off that gold supposed to be down the canyon. I shouldn't have expected to get rich just by looking for a man's stash anyhow. If you want outlaw loot, you gotta live an outlaw life. Not many make it last, but I like to think Butch did. Beat the system and retired to Spokane. And that's better than me finding it. In fact, let's say I traded this story for a couple of sacks of Telluride gold and call it square at that. Because a story lets you saddle up and ride with Butch again and again and return safe to a quiet life in Spokane.